and welcome back to another episode of the Boropolis Podcast. Of course, as always, I'm joined with Nathan, and for what seems the longest time now, really, we are recording the podcast fresh off the back of another positive result for Middlesbrough. And I mean, we normally start the podcast off, don't we? I always religiously ask you how you're feeling, and for the last probably 3 weeks now, you've said, yeah, I'm great, and I'm not expecting any other answer, really, because there's every reason to be happy.
Of course there is. It's just nice to come on here and just be happy about our football team. It was a bit rocky at the start of the season when 1 week it was a high, next week it was a low. And you kind of expect it to happen again. But at the minute, we're on a fantastic run, and another unbelievable result on Saturday has left us all smiling and happy again.
Yeah, smiling and happy. Football's going good. Christmas is just round the corner. Yeah, there's every reason to smile, isn't there? But perhaps one reason to maybe hold back that full-on grin at the moment is, of course, the outbreak of COVID in a lot of football clubs. We just said we'd sort of touch on it before we really go into the Bournemouth game, of course. We can't wait to start talking about that. But, you know, on a more serious note, of course, we did see it was really from the tail end of last week's games, wasn't it? That a few training grounds were starting to be shut down. And then this week, I mean, COVID's just sort of hit the Football League like a ton of bricks, and I'm sure many other lower down levels. But, you know, luckily our game went ahead, but we were quite lucky, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. I think a lot of fans of clubs will have been gutted this week. I think it's the best time of year to be watching football around Christmas. The games come thick and fast, and wherever you go, really, up and down the country, stadiums are packed out. Everyone loves the fixtures around Christmas, and it is awful that some clubs are being hit with COVID. And just thankfully for us this weekend, our players and staff are all okay, and long may that continue, hopefully, fingers crossed, and hopefully everyone that's been affected by it in the last few weeks or so comes through it and is okay come Christmas and New Year time.
Yeah, definitely, Nathan. And of course, on behalf of both of them, I'm sure everyone, make sure to stay safe. And for anyone that may be, you know, suffering with COVID, even some of the players, you know, we've seen various cases, even rumoured cases in the Middlesbrough team. So yeah, by all means, get well soon, and hopefully, you know, the Christmas festive football period can continue as we all know and love it. So, on a more positive note, straight into the Bournemouth game, Nathan. Now, normally I'd ask you your thoughts on the team, but I want to ask you about something else first, actually. You, all week prior to the Bournemouth game, and even prior to the Stoke game, we obviously went and we mentioned it on the podcast, but you were, for some reason, super, super confident that we were going to get a result at Bournemouth, at the Riverside, of course. That sort of come true. Was there any reason why you were so confident, or was it just one of those feelings?
Just a gut feeling, really. I've sort of had it since pretty much the start of December, really, just thinking ahead to the games coming up and what have you. And I picked out Bournemouth and thought, right, get a few good results out of the way against Swansea and Stoke, and we'll go on to Bournemouth, who are flying high. Of course, they were unbeaten in the opening 10 or so games, which was fantastic for them. But they've sort of petered out. The form was a bit iffy in the last few weeks. I think they hadn't had a win in 5 prior to their visit to the Riverside at the weekend. And with the way that we were playing in the last few weeks, I just thought perfect opportunity to sort of put a stamp on this game and say, yeah, we are a very good side in this division. We are playing some really good football at the minute. And yeah, hopefully it continues and fires us up the league and catches us up with Bournemouth, really.
Yeah, I mean, really, you were spot on, weren't you, with your prediction? And we always sort of on the morning of a game or what have you give a few predictions between the two of us, because for anyone that's listened to all the podcasts we've seen previously, if we predict anything on this podcast, it usually is the complete opposite. I distinctly remember predicting a 3-0 win against Blackpool earlier in the season, and they beat us 2-1, didn't that, at the Riverside? So yeah, from that point onwards, we've just sort of stayed away from any form of prediction. But yeah, we were quite good with our predictions between the two of us this week. Just in terms of obviously going into the game now, Nathan, in regards to the starting 11, we were missing Mark Bowler, and of course that meant that Neil Taylor had his first start in the team. But apart from that, there was no other changes. I'm guessing you were relatively happy with the team as it was.
Yeah, relatively happy again. From what I've gathered watching Chris Wilder's Middlesbrough, his early part of his reign as manager, I think he doesn't really like to make all too many changes at all to his starting 11. I think we've only seen a few in positions that may have been necessary, really. A few injuries and niggles going back earlier on, where Peltier was injured and Dyksteal came in at Huddersfield. Of course, we found this week that apparently one player in the squad has been struck down with COVID. I'm not going to throw names about, but Bowler wasn't in the squad, and Taylor is that man that can fill in there and replace him. And I think just looking back, I don't know why Neil Taylor wasn't brought in sooner, really. To the football club at the start of the season. Of course, free agent. We needed left-sided defence cover, and he was available, but clearly didn't fancy it under Neil Warnock. And as soon as Chris Wilder came in, he was snapped up straight away, and I thought he filled in brilliantly on Saturday. And we'll get into his performance as well as the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, he put on a great display, didn't we? And as you say, we'll delve deeper into some personal performances as we go through the game. But yeah, Neil Taylor had a really promising debut, didn't he? Just moving into the action now, really, it was quite again, really, from Middlesbrough, especially at the Riverside, even this season under Neil Warnock, whether we've had a bad second half, we've always started relatively well, and it was no change really on Saturday. Of course, early kickoff on Sky Sports, perhaps the players wanted to make an immediate impact, and yeah, we were straight away creating chances, keeping the ball well, putting together some nice little moves. And the first real chance fell to Matt Crooks, didn't it? Some good work by him, and Isaiah Jones down the right delivered that ball in, and Crooks from probably 6 yards out, really. He probably should score, shouldn't he?
Yeah, he should. It's straight at Mark Travers in the Bournemouth goal, but it's promising to see us going down both wings and linking up really well. I think Jones is a big part of that, getting down that right-hand side and putting balls across pretty much on a plate for players, really. If you look back at the last few weeks, in teeing up chances for Watmore, amongst others, it was pretty much carbon copy of the ones he's been putting on a plate for Watmore. But this time it was Crooks, and yeah, maybe he should score, but it was promising early signs from Borough in this game.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And, I think one thing that has to be mentioned is I saw, as well as a lot of praise for Isaiah Jones, and rightfully so, because I thought he was excellent on Saturday, I did see a few people questioning his end product on various forums and things like that, in the odd post on social media. And, like you say, I think it's important to mention and sort of remember that had Duncan Watmore put Isaiah Jones's chance away at Stoke, it's another assist to add to his list. And, he's already got the assist for Watmore, as you say, for that Huddersfield goal. But I think there's certainly area where Isaiah Jones will be looking and thinking, you look at some of the other wing backs and right backs throughout the top divisions in the Football League and think, well, the output that they put forward is more similar to sort of your traditional winger or forward, really. So of course he'll want to improve that, but given his newfound position, really, because he said himself it's not a position that he's played before Chris Wilder come into the club. He needs an awful lot of credit, and for anyone sort of trying to jump on his end product, I mean, we saw there again, if Matt Crooks puts that away, then he's got 2 assists in the last 2 games, hasn't he? And of course, if Duncan Watmore puts the Stoke chance away. So yeah, I think just give him a little bit of an easier time. I think he's playing brilliantly at the moment. So just leave him to improve his crossing, and I'm sure he'll add the numbers as the season progresses.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just as well, playing in that right wing back role, he's been asked to do 2 different jobs. When maybe earlier on in his career, his main job was just to attack, get his full back, put balls into the box and create chances, really. But now in that new right wing back role that he's found himself in, he has to do the defensive side of things as well. And I think he's doing outstandingly well in there at both attacking and defending. He gets us up the pitch really well. I think his pace is, of course, his best asset. I think it's outstanding, his pace and his dribbling. And it, as I say, gets us up the pitch really well and into good positions to create chances. But his defensive duties have been pretty spot on as well for me. We'll get on to the penalty later on in the game, but the whole build-up from Jones in that passage of play was absolutely outstanding, and I think he's only going to get better as he plays more games in that position as well.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. And, we said we'll wait until the end of sort of dissecting the game before we give anyone any individual praise. But, Isaiah Jones has grown into that role so much that I think the praise is warranted, to be honest. So just moving on into the action of the first half. One moment that really stood out for me, and it could have been a worse moment, definitely, but it sort of panned out okay, and everyone, breathed a sigh of relief. It was that chance early on for Bournemouth, wasn't it? Jadon Anthony. It basically comes from us trying to play out from the back, and for a long time, Middlesbrough fans have cried out that we don't want to watch hoofball, and I think everyone knows the names associated with that type of football in Middlesbrough Football Club. But under Chris Wilder, we're going to see a change. And of course, we saw the 2 centre-backs drop off when we do have a goal kick. And the chance for Jadon Anthony really comes from Helsing getting the ball on the back foot. And he just first time tries to play a pass into Dale Fry, and that gets cut out. And, there was the moans and groans, and everyone was worried that, playing out from the back, just get it long. And of course, Jadon Anthony goes on to miss. Arguably, he should score. But what I would say, Nathan, is, as fans, I think we're gonna have to get used to it, aren't we? It is something that Chris Wilder said, even in his post-match press conference. He wants his players to be brave on the ball, and mistakes will come from that. We spoke about it last week with Sol Bamba, didn't we? And even a few weeks before with the Preston goal where Bamba tries to play out from the back. But it's just something that I think as fans we're just going to have to be patient with, and it'd be just interesting to hear your thoughts on that, because there was a lot of sighs and moans and groans when that chance came about for Bournemouth. But I think it's just something that we're going to have to get used to, really.
Yeah, I sort of touched on it last week, just that at times when we're playing out from the back and we're under a bit of pressure, I myself get a bit tetchy and think, just get rid of it, sort of thing. But the players need to be confident in their own ability, and they can play out from the back. We've seen it a few times. We play out really well and play through the thirds and end up on the front foot and attacking. But just in this new style of play that Wilder wants to play, playing out from the back, trying to play out from the opposition's press and play around it, We will get caught out a few times. It's perfectly normal, I think, to sort of just expect mistakes early on, really, from playing out from the back. There will be misplaced passes, unfortunately, that will lead to opposition chances. And that was a big one for Bournemouth on Saturday. Anthony gets the ball after Howson's misplaced pass, chops inside a Dyksteal, then outside, and then fires a shot wide. And it should really have put them 1-0 up. But it was a big let off for us. And I think it's important for the team as well to realise, even though we may concede opportunities like that we shouldn't stop playing that way just to stop conceding those sort of chances. We need to continue on playing that way. We'll get used to it and we'll become more confident in playing that way the more we do it. So, yeah, we will give chances away, but us as fans, we just need to bear with it. I think it's harder for us as well after years of just, as you say, smashing the ball up front and no nonsense sort of thing, instead of just passing the ball and keeping it nice and tidy. So I think us fans get a bit tetchy, myself included, and we just have to sort of just calm ourselves down, bear with it, and it'll come for us. We will start playing really well out from the back and playing through the thirds, and I have no doubt that it will be miles better from this stage of the season to the end of the season. We'll be better at doing that by then as well.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly there, really, Nathan. And really, I mean, just touching back on the last podcast again, when we were previewing this game, we both said that, you know, we're not going to make a scoreline prediction, but what we will say is it'll be a good game for the neutral to watch. And of course, it was on Sky Sports, and it felt like in the first half there was really a number of almost clear-cut chances for both teams, really. And you know, although we don't want to watch that as Middlesbrough fans, you know, it is and was. It's more entertaining, this brand of football, isn't it? And you know, Chris Wilder said in his post-match press conference that he said to his players that, you know, don't sort of be scared if they have the ball. Don't, you know, Bournemouth have got an abundance of, I mean, Premier League players, really. There's so many good players and talented players in that team that you kind of just have to accept sometimes that the opposition are going to create chances. And of course, you've got to try and deal with that as well as you can and limit it, of course. But, you know, I think that was part of the reason. It was always going to be a game where both teams had chances. And just on a chance that we had, really, before Bournemouth had possibly the most clear-cut chance of the first half, Anthony Dyksteal, who is, I think, there's a few moments over the past few weeks where he's looked a little bit nervy on the ball, but you can see each game as it comes, he's grown into that role of the right-sided centre-back, and it does allow him, and we've seen previously, more so over recent weeks, that he's quite comfortable coming in field and picking passes, and even, you know, the chance I'm just about to talk about, he comes inside and he unleashes a fairly decent strike on his left foot. It's deflected and it nearly wrong foots Travers, doesn't it, the Bournemouth goalkeeper, but just on Dyksteal and Paddy McNair. Of course, there isn't that balance with Paddy McNair coming inside onto his right foot from the left, but in terms of Dyksteal in that chance, it just goes to show that change in style again, and I'm all for it, to be honest, Nathan. I'm sure you're exactly the same.
Yeah, it just goes to show anyone in this team can have the chances, really. Dyksteal, playing on the right side of centre half, finds himself on their 18-yard box and fires a good shot off, tests the goalkeeper with his weaker left foot as well, really. And I think what I like to see from Dyksteal is, especially when he drives inside quite a lot, drives through the centre of the pitch, carrying the ball, which I really like to see. I think just as a player, he has a lot of physical attributes that go well with being able to do that. He's relatively quick. You can see in his upper body build, He's a strong lad, strong runner with the ball. And it is good to have the defenders step into midfield and sort of knock a ball either out wide to Jones or Taylor or Bowler, whoever that may be, and get us on the front foot looking to create chances. And yeah, as you say about Dyksteal playing out from the back and whatever, he has been a bit nervy on the ball at times. I remember one issue on the ball on Saturday. He sort of took a touch that was a bit heavy. That I can't remember if it did lead to a chance or not, but I remember his touch and I was thinking, oh, maybe just sort of relax under pressure a little bit more and we'll be okay once everyone sort of gets on the same page, that we're all confident on the ball and all confident in possession as well. But I'm sure once he gets, I don't think he's even back to full fitness yet. I know he's played the last few games, but you can tell he's not really 100% fit, but he's certainly keeping his place in the team really well so far. And when he's back 100% fit, I think we will see the Anthony Dyksteal that we saw for a few periods last season under Neil Warnock, where he's probably one of the better fullbacks in the division.
Yeah, and really going on to another chance straight away. You know, we spoke of how many chances there was in the first half, and I think for me it was probably the best half, the best chance of the half, I should say. Philip Billen, who of course we marked as a real threat last week, gets down the left, and on that left foot, he's got so much quality in that left foot. Of course, he delivers a ball low and hard right across the front of the 6-yard box. You know, Joe Lumley can't come out and claim it, and it goes right across the defence, falls to Ryan Christie, and really, I'm not sure how he doesn't score, to be honest. He somehow gets the technique a little bit wrong, and he comes sliding in and it sort of cannons off his right foot and goes over the bar. But yeah, from our seats, especially in the West Stand, I was just waiting for the ball to hit the back of the net, to be honest.
Yeah, it looked like he definitely should have been finishing that chance, really. But I think I've seen a replay of it, and the ball bounces just in front of him. He just has his foot a little bit off the ground and kicks the ball into the ground, and it sort of goes over and wide, which again, another let off for us. I think we will concede chances, especially against teams of Bournemouth's calibre, really. They're one of the better sides in the division at creating chances. You've seen them this season put sides away for 4-0, 3-0. So they will create chances against pretty much everyone that they play in the division. And it's a let off for us again. And we go in 0-0 at the break. And I think we were just sort of both expecting going into the second half that both teams again would have a few chances, both be a bit cagey. I thought it'd be early on in the second half, but it really wasn't cagey at all. Both sides just going for it in that early period of the second half, and we were the side that got that break with Jones early on in the second half, within the first sort of 10 minutes of that second half. Jadon Anthony going down the left side attacks Isaiah Jones, and Jones wins the ball off him beautifully, drives up the line and just buys the penalty off him, just steps across at Anthony into the box. Anthony just sort of makes contact with Jones in the back, and penalty to Borough. Jones is fantastic at buying those fouls, just sort of killing the game really when we're under pressure. But he uses this chance to win us a penalty and gives us the perfect opportunity to go 1-0 up.
Yeah, as you say, obviously Jones really just emphasising sort of what is about in that right wing back role. In terms of that little section of play where, you know, as you say, he nicks the ball off Anthony and through his pace and his dribbling manages to get in front of him. And then as he's bearing down on goal, you sort of just, he knows exactly what he's doing, doesn't he? He just gets in front of Anthony that little bit, makes sure that his body's across him and almost sort of waits for the contact. And some people might say, well, he should try and go for goal, but in a game where whoever scored the first goal, really, I felt was probably gonna go on and win the game. It's all about getting the best opportunity to do that, and of course, Isaiah Jones knows exactly what he's doing. As you say, the contact comes from behind, and he goes down, and then we get the penalty, and as soon as we get the penalty, I don't know about you. I knew for a fact that Sparrow was from the interviews that he's conducted and even from some of his Instagram posts, we know that as a player and as a man, he's not shy of confidence at all. And that's not in a bad way. That is by no means in a bad way. But up until obviously Saturday's game, Sparrow, it had been sort of becoming more and more public by the week that he was going through a little bit of a goal drought. And, he was needing to score because, he certainly was affecting games. But as a striker, I'm sure he'll admit himself, he's in the team to score goals and he hadn't been doing that really. So as soon as that penalty was given, obviously he steps up. And in fairness, for someone that hasn't scored for so long, he showed, he still had all that confidence left, and he fires it straight into the bottom left corner, and of course celebrates. And then the famous chant that is just seems to have taken over the world really at the moment, then starts being bellowed out from all sections of the stand. Just before, obviously, we talk about that celebration and the chant, to be honest, because I want to talk about that a little bit. Did you have any real sort of nerves prior to Sparrow stepping up, and did you think he was the man that was always going to take that penalty?
Yeah, I knew he'd be the one that'd be stepping up 100%, but I think just over a regular theme for me since Leadbitter's left the football club, whenever we have penalties, I'm just never confident, really. 1 week it can be McNair, 1 week it can be Sparrow. In past times, it could be a Sombalonga and what have you. So it's sort of just neat. I'm always a bit nervy with it, but so far this season, I think if I'm not wrong, we've had 3 penalties, I think, and they've all been converted. McNair against Peterborough, Sparrow at Cardiff, and Sparrow obviously on Saturday against Bournemouth, and it's a confident penalty.
Actually, because I remember Uche scoring one against
Uche, yeah, of course, yeah. Uche against QPR. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, that still makes it 100% record. So
100% record, exactly. But then again, there's another penalty taker there. So it can be anyone that takes these penalties, and we've done all right at converting them so far. And yeah, Sparrow, very confident penalty, just puts it in the corner, low and hard, and that's his goal drought ended for now. Hopefully, I think we've spoken about it a few times now. We think if he gets one, sort of relieves himself of that burden that's on his shoulders, hopefully he'll go on a bit of a run and start putting the chances that he gets away. He has been a bit shy of chances in recent weeks. It seems that from when I've been watching highlights, he's usually the one that's moving defenders away for other players to have the chances themselves. But for me, I'd rather have the other players moving around, trying to create chances for Sparrow. I think he's the best finisher at this football club. So at this current time, and it was, as I say, very confident penalty, puts it away, 1-0 up, and good to see the team all united in front of the South stand with him as well. It was brilliant, and especially at this time when games aren't going ahead, it's amazing to see the players celebrate with the fans. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, we can't talk about Andres Sparrow scoring a goal without talking about his chant at the moment. It just seems like, doesn't it, that I can't remember, I might be wrong, probably looking back to maybe Aito Karanga, Aito Labamba song during the promotion season or during the Wembley season, whenever that started. A song's caught on so much, and it seems like whenever it's sung, it's the loudest song sung. And Sparaz acknowledged it. We saw a few weeks ago him going off. I think it was against Swansea, wasn't it? I hope memory serves
Yeah,
me
it
well.
was.
And the full of the South Stand are singing it to him, and he's patted the badge and applauded the fans, and I mean it's just what a song, really.
Yeah, I think the best type of songs for me as a football fan, looking at it from a football fan's point of view, are the ones that are directed at a player or a group of players. Really, you look at La Bamba, and then of course this new Spara chant. We've got other ones. The one for Jones is fantastic as well, and it can only boost the player's confidence. Really, I think it's everything that you want as a player. You want the fans to be behind you, even though Spara was on a bit of a barren run in front of goal. He had the fans behind him, wishing him on, wishing for him to score that goal, get that chance, and put it away. And this time he has, and before we get to the end of the game, it's won us 3 points at the weekend, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I love chants that are directed at players. It's fantastic and must help to boost the confidence. I mean, obviously not experiencing it myself or anything, but having a chant directed at you with your name in it and all for you, it must be outstanding to hear.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll have experience, in with dreams when we're a full Riverside chanting our names, but yeah, nothing quite to that point just yet. It remains to be seen if that'll ever happen. It definitely won't happen, that's for sure. But yeah, Sparad even, posted on Instagram, I think it was a few weeks prior, almost apologising for the fact that he hadn't scored in a while and saying, your support really helps and it's keeping me going. So as you say there, you make a valid point. Some might sort of undermine how important that getting behind the players really is, but it certainly has kept Andres Sparra confident, and of course he got his rewards for keeping his head up and taking that chance away. So moving on from obviously Sparra ending his goal drought, from that point onwards, I mean, don't get me wrong, this season is building in a way where it's very exciting, and to be honest, I think there's going to be a lot of good moments. But for me, potentially moment of the season already, and I mean, just everything about the comedic timing of the of the linesman's flag going up, the fact that of course, we're talking about Onel Hernandez going through and scoring and whipping his shirt off. I'm already nearly gone here just thinking about it. But Nathan, I mean, I'm laughing about it now. I was laughing about it in the stadium. And do you know what? I was celebrating going mental when it hits the back of the net and my dad says, Chris, it's offside. Immediately you sit back down and you think, oh, God, I feel a bit of a donut jumping up and celebrating when it's offside. But, it could be worse. You could have been the one ripping your top off and swirling it around in the air. Onel Hernandez really there. I mean, what a moment, but what a funny moment, really.
Yeah, just going back to the actual move, really. Tavernier in the middle of the park gets past one. Good play from him, actually. Slides it to Sparra, and then do you want to know what? I'm gonna say I actually didn't jump up because I knew he was offside and I saw the linesman's flag before he'd even put the ball in the net. I'd seen the linesman's flag, and yeah, do you want to know what? It's an amazing finish as well. He hasn't got all too much to aim at, and he slides it in the corner. But yeah, that had been his second goal for the club. That would have been for Onel. It would have been 2 shirts whipped off for both goal celebrations. I mean, thankfully he didn't throw this one in the crowd because I don't think he'd have got it back. like he did
Yeah.
against Nottingham Forest. But yeah, what a funny moment. And I was just laughing because the Bournemouth bench wanted to kick off straight away, but the referees held the game up for Hernandez to put his shirt back on, and I think the footage shows Hernandez just laughing with the referee, just saying how embarrassing is that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a very funny moment. He's definitely a hilarious character to have, and have around the dressing room. I think he's just one of them characters, really. At the end of the game, when the players are walking around the pitch, I saw Tavernier just laughing at him, just saying, "What an absolute donut you are for doing that." But yeah, a funny moment. But at that stage of the game, with sort of like 10 minutes to go, I just turned around and I thought, oh, the result has got to go our way, please, because it'd just be the worst thing ever. It'd have been made into a meme among the championship. Hernandez taking his shirt off and Borough not getting 3 points. But luckily, that just went our way. We sort of saw the game out really well. Bournemouth didn't really have too many chances. I think there was one that tested Lumley late in the game where he made a decent save and Crooks cleared the rebound. But barring that, Bournemouth didn't really threaten us all too much in that second half. Only that one real chance, I think, and I was quite surprised that their attacking players didn't cause us as many problems as I anticipated. I think Solanke, we bigged him up before the game, of course, one of the better strikers in this division, and Dale Fry's probably emptied his pockets when he's gone home and found him in there, because he didn't have a sniff all game, really, did he, Dom Solanke?
No, he didn't, as you're saying, and it was almost quite surprising for me, where as we're saying, just going back to that Hernandez moment just briefly, as soon as that hits the back of the net and the flag goes up, in my head, all I can think about is there's a Twitter page, and I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure listeners will have seen it as well. In my head, straight away, I'm just thinking EFL images that preceded an unfortunate event. There's the picture of Arnell with his top off. Just it's ready to go. It's written into the script that we will either concede or lose the game from now on, because it's just such a Middlesbrough thing to do. But it wasn't to be the case, and credit's got to go to the defenders. Of course, Dale Fry kept Solanke quiet all game, and of course Dyksteal, Taylor, McNair, Jones as well. But yeah, I was almost shocked, to be honest, because from my memory, as you say as well, that there was only really one save that Lumley had to make. I know, a little bit prior to that, Stanislas had a free kick, which
Yeah.
really Lumley palmed away, but I don't think he was under any real threat of, I think he had it covered, to be honest. But yeah, from that moment on, I was just prepared for the worst, to be honest. But we held out and we defended well, and then of course we saw some, again, similar to Stoke, some really nice scenes with fans staying behind and the players going around and applauding and thanking the fans for their efforts of helping them to get to that final whistle and rolling them on to the 3 points. Just in terms of the result, Chris Wilder had spoken, hadn't he, about he could feel, or I can't remember if he said he could feel a big performance coming, or we needed a big performance coming in. Either way, that's exactly what he got on Saturday. Again, every single player, and I think it's the minimum that fans and the manager expects, but you do notice it more, especially on games like Saturday. Every single player, as soon as the full-time whistle goes, they all look absolutely knackered, and that's only credit to them, because once again they ran themselves into the ground, they've held on, they've defended well, and they got the job done. Really, it was a superb performance from us.
Yeah, it was a good performance. Again, creating chances, defensively solid, didn't give all too much away, really. yeah, Bournemouth did have one or two chances that they should have done better with, maybe. But I felt that defensively we limited their front three to pretty much nothing, really. One chance really that came from a defensive error trying to play out from the back, but we said that they'll come, unfortunately. We will get better at dealing with things like that. And really, they only carved out one proper chance through their own work, which I think that just proves how good our performance was, really, against one of the better sides in the division, to only really have one chance conceded through their own making is outstanding. And I think, just to say man of the match, for me, it has to be Jones, really. I thought he was absolutely outstanding for that goal. In the build up to it, winning the penalty, the tackle on Anthony is brilliant. Just stops him from letting him turn and getting at him. Just wins it on his first touch, and then drives into the box, wins the penalty. Defensively, he was solid all day. He got up the line a lot. He pressured Zamora into a mistake late on when he could have played Hernandez in, but chose not to. I thought it was fair enough him going alone, but it just, I think that's where a lot of the questions come in about his end products. But for me, I don't think it's really a question. I think his end product's been outstanding really all season, putting balls on plates for our strikers to take chances. And yeah, man of the match for me, Isaiah Jones. And who knows where he'll end up playing if a certain man returns in January. We'll get onto him later on in the questions, but it'd take a lot at the minute to dislodge Isaiah Jones from that position. I think, despite him only playing there for a number of weeks, he's probably been one of the standout players in the team, really. So, man of the match, Isaiah Jones for me.
Yeah, I think you say about Jones there. We've mentioned Dale Fry, who I thought again was superb. Never put a foot wrong all afternoon, really. And then you look at even Duncan Watmore, and in terms of his sort of the chances that he had, he didn't really have. I can't really remember a chance that he actually had on Saturday, but yet again, his work rate is just it's second to none, isn't it? I'd love to see his running stats, because I would, if I was a serious betting man, I'd place a lot of money that at the weekend he ran and covered the most distance by a serious amount, because he never seems to get tired. He just whether it just be chasing down the goalkeeper or chasing down a centre half, wherever it may be, he just seems to sprint. And I mean, fair play, because it rubs off on fans. You see when he chases the goalkeeper down, he gets an applause, or the fans sort of just, they love that. I'm not going to repeat it on the podcast, but that chant as the keeper's about to clear the ball, I think we all know what I'm talking about. You fat something or other, I think it goes like. But yeah, just man of the match for me, I think it would have to be Jones again. But yeah, I mean, Neil Taylor, he certainly with a shout. Sparrow, he broke his duck, and I thought his general hold-up play all afternoon was superb. I can't remember him giving the ball away, to be honest, when with his back to goal especially, and big centre half side Gary Cahill to compete with. I thought he had a great game. So yeah, lots of standout performers. And overall, just a fantastic performance again from Middlesbrough, and hopefully this run continues. Of course, it adds to that unbeaten run that we have going on at the moment. And yeah, I mean, it once again points towards the future under Chris Wilder being an exciting time to be a Middlesbrough fan, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And just before we move on to the questions from the listeners, just like to ask you a question, Chris. we've been under Chris Wilder for about a month now, maybe just over a month. And I just want to put to you, who do you think is the most improved player under Chris Wilder so far? Who has fitted into their role in this system probably better than everyone else? I suppose you can argue Jones because he hasn't really played that position, but if your answer's not Jones, then I'd be interested to find out who that'd be.
It's a good question, to be fair, and you know, because of the positive results we've had, I think you can make a good case for quite a few. You know, we've seen Paddy McNair slot back into that back three, and he shone really, but I mean that was to be expected. I think apart from Jones, who is the obvious one, to be honest, I think Matt Crooks he just seems to improve game by game, and it seems like once every 3 weeks, probably even less than that, we go on a whole basically description of how good he is for Middlesbrough and how good he's been, and the fact that, you know, with the three that we have in midfield, and I think a lot of this has to actually do with the improvements that Johnny Howson's made. There's another name that could quite easily answer that question. And because of the fact that Tav now has that extra sort of freedom in midfield, it's almost given the midfield the balance. And I think out of all of them, Crooks has benefited from that the most because, I mean, do you know what? I'm gonna do it again. I'm just gonna talk about how good he actually is, because not only does he win every aerial duel, it seems like. I mean, he must be 6'3", 6'4", because he looks huge on the pitch. And then to add to that, he seems to win every tackle. And of course, these stats aren't, you know, bang on. Of course, he doesn't win every single tackle, but just when you're watching a game, he never really puts a foot wrong. He contributes in the attacking sense. You know, he should have scored against Bournemouth, but we've seen this season already that he can contribute. And defensively, again, he puts just as much effort getting back and helping the team out. So for me, yeah, apart from Jones, I'd probably have to say Matt Crooks. I mean, I think you kind of answered your own question, didn't you? I think yours would be Isaiah Jones, but I think for me, those two are the real standouts, and definitely a notable mention to Johnny Howson as well, because I think we discussed it on the last podcast, didn't we? Or we might have discussed it on a live Twitter space on a Thursday night, but Johnny Howson's improved definitely in terms of his ability to take the ball on the back foot and turn and you know, progress the ball through the thirds, really. So yeah, I mean, overall, the best way to describe it is that Chris Wilder has improved everyone. I don't think there's one player that's, you know, potentially you look at certain individuals and you think, well, he hasn't had as much game time. But in terms of the players that have been playing, every one of them, in terms of their performances, have improved, and that's just gone to show in the results, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And as you say, Johnny Howson there, I think my two, if I had to pick two players that improved the most under Chris Wilder in this new system, and I said, of course, Jones. Jones is the real standout, I think, playing in a new position and performing so well. But for me, it'd have to be Johnny Howson, really. I think playing in that bit of a deeper role in midfield, I think it's just easy for him in there. Just knocking the ball into the other players in midfield, Tavernier and Crooks, and letting them really create. And Johnny Howson's just the destroyer in there, really. He's sometimes I just watch him during games and he'll just start pressing their back four all of a sudden, and I'll be like, Johnny, I don't know if that's meant to be your job, but he just loves to press. He's got legs for days to just run about and just try and press players, press teams into mistakes. And I thought he's been outstanding, really. Apart from that one pass that he misplaced that led to a Bournemouth chance on Saturday, I thought again he just neat and tidy, and it's just good to have someone comfortable in there that's comfortable on the ball and can just ease us into an attacking third quite comfortably with a neat pass out wide or to the attacking players further forward in midfield, your Tavernier and Crooks. So yeah, I'd say Helsing really as well for one of my most improved players under Chris Wilder. And I suppose now that just leads us on to the questions, I guess.
Yeah, it does. It leads us very nicely onto the listener questions. And of course, thank you as ever for getting in touch through Twitter and asking us the questions, because, you know, as I say normally on the podcast, it's one of my favourite parts of doing this, to be honest, hearing everyone else's thoughts. So firstly, Leon got in touch and he said, do you think that Piero should be replacing Tav in the team? David also asked a similar question about, you know, what is Piero doing in training? Why isn't he getting in the team at the moment? And I think, to answer the question from my point of view, of course, Nathan, I'll ask you as well. I think, you know, this is sort of two different questions, really, isn't it? One is about, you know, why isn't he replacing Tav, especially, but also why isn't Piero getting in the team? And I think the obvious reason is because of the fact that the midfield is so balanced at the moment. And by balanced, I mean that we have Crooks, who is, you know, quite obviously right-footed, is that sort of right side of the three, and Tav, the left-footed of the three on the left. It just gives a natural sort of, I mean, I'll say balance again. I feel like I've said it about 700 times in the past 30 seconds. But just in terms of when the ball's being switched, it means that when Tav takes it on his left foot, he can then open up and spray it out to the left back. And, you know, vice versa with Crooks. And, you know, as much as Tav probably isn't contributing the goals and assists, which a lot of people often criticise him for, I think that, you know, I don't really see it changing, to be honest, at the moment. And potentially over the Christmas period, we might see a different variation of that three. But in terms of Tav's work rate and what he adds to the team, in terms of his energy and his defensive capabilities, to be honest, there was a few times, just going back to the game on Saturday, where, you know, Bournemouth looked like they were about to start an attack. And from nowhere, really, Tav just appears, wins the ball back, and then recycles possession. So to answer that part of the question, I think as much as Piero, we've seen the technical ability that he has, he has it in abundance, but I don't think he's going to replace Tav anytime soon. And in regards to what Piero's doing in training, I don't think that it's really a question of what he's doing in training, because I'm sure that he's performing just as well. It's just, it comes back to the fact that, you know, that balance in midfield, especially in Chris Wilder's team, is so essential. And unless there's an injury in there, I unfortunately, as much as I want to see Piero play as much as everyone else, I think he's going to find it hard to get game time moving forward, really.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you say, really, there. I think the main point as to why he probably won't be getting in this team at this moment in time is the balance. I think at the minute, perfectly balanced with Helsing sitting in there, as I say earlier, being just that midfield destroyer that can easily just knock the ball to his centre halves or out wide to the wing backs or whatever. Tavernier on that left side being left-footed, and Crooks being on that right side being right-footed. It's all about balance, really. We've been crying out for a midfield that has balance. Me and yourself, Chris, been mentioning it all season, really. And since Wilder come in and has played this midfield trio, it's been fine. They've all played really well together in there, all doing the jobs really well. So I think it's a case of, if it's not broken, don't fix it, sort of thing. Wilder said in his press conferences about Piero needing to be 100% fit, and when he is, he'll be eased in. So he's been back on the bench in recent weeks. Of course, we saw on Middlesbrough's website that we played a reserve game at Huddersfield with a few of our players that are in the first team, or in and around the first team, should I say, in that starting 11, and Piero was one of those, scored 2 and played 45 minutes, which is promising, of course. We all know his technical ability, but for now, I think it's best to just not disrupt that balance. If there's any fatigue in midfield, in that midfield three that's been playing so regularly, I think Piero will be the man to fill in there. But for now, I suppose it's just best not to change it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know, I think, of course, I mean, still, I don't think really the buzz about Piero will ever go away, really, because of the fact, you know, there was such a saga about his transfer, and because of the fact that, you know, he's South American. It's just, it's sort of football fan sort of nature to have that excitement and want to see him playing. You know, we all feel the same, but just at the moment, I think the next time really it looks like he'll get a run out is probably the Mansfield Cup tie, to be honest. So, of course, I guess we'll look forward to that, and hopefully he gets some moments to show what he can do in that game. So just moving on to the next question, and this one comes in from Charlie. He actually asked 2 questions, and he firstly asks Nathan, how many players do you think we need in January? And the second part of his question is in reference to an interview that Chris Wilder recently done, where he mentioned some complicated factors in potentially bringing Jed Spence back to the club. Of course, he's on loan at Nottingham Forest at the moment, and there's been various reports with regards to the fact we want to recall him, the fact that he's quite happy to stay at Forest. So yeah, firstly, I'll ask you, of course, about how many players you think we're looking at bringing in, and what you think we need in January, but also, of course, feel free to answer that Jed Spence question as well.
Yeah. About January, I myself will probably differ to whatever Chris Wilder thinks, really. He'll know the playing staff best and what he wants to play in this new system that he's implemented at the football club. But I think from the outside looking in, I think he'd definitely be looking at a goalkeeper. We've spoken about it in the last few weeks. He wants the goalkeepers to be comfortable with the ball at the feet. In the last few weeks, we have seen Joe Lumley come in the number 1 spot, and I think he's done a relatively solid job, to be fair. He looks a bit more comfortable with the ball at his feet than Luke Daniels does. And I think, to be fair as well, in terms of the level of goalkeeping that both of those two are at, I think they're relatively similar. So I think Lumley will be favoured, if I'm honest, out of those two. I think the obvious one, with the mention of Spence, is right wing back. If Jones gets injured, we don't have any cover there at this moment in time. So I think he'll be looking at someone in there. Maybe another centre half. If 1 or 2 leave, we have players that aren't getting game time at the moment. You look at Grant Hall. I know Nathan Wood can't play till January, but it'll be interesting to see if he is that extra centre half that's needed to just come in and fill in when and if he's needed. Maybe an attacking midfielder. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think the balance so far, as we've just said, is fantastic. With Piero on the bench as well, that's fine to have him there. I think Saliki, we may see his loan terminated, if I'm honest. He hasn't really had a chance at all under Chris Wilder, which sort of speaks volumes on what Chris Wilder's opinion is on James Saliki and whether he'll fit in to this style of play. And then I think the main positions that we'll be looking at are those striker roles. Really, we've seen names mentioned in the press rumours in the last few weeks, and who knows if and when these players will come in. But Chris Wilder said about wanting to get business done early, which is nice to hear. We don't usually have that from the football club. It's usually last minute and late on in the window that we do most of our business. But it'd be good to get one or two strikers in. But I think that to facilitate transfers in, there will be transfers out, and we'll just have to see who those players are. And then just touching on the Spence question, I think when Wilder first came to the football club, everyone sort of flung their eyes towards Jed Spence and were thinking, well, he's doing really well at Nottingham Forest. He'd probably fit the system perfectly, really, in terms of getting forward and getting back, doing both jobs in that right wing back role. But the complicated reason for his recall, and we did speak about this as well when Wilder first came in, is what if he doesn't want to leave? And that's coming out now that Jed Spence probably doesn't want to leave Nottingham Forest. He's playing really well there. He's playing in a system with a manager that trusts him and a manager and a club that have wanted him there. He's been here in the past where fans have sort of been on his back a little bit and sort of questioned his ability. But now he's got to Nottingham Forest and he's playing really well. The fans love him. Probably it's closer to where he lives, where he's from. He's from London, so of course it's a bit further down the country, easier to facilitate his family life probably. And not forgetting he is only a young lad. He's only about mine and Chris's age, so he probably doesn't want to be too far away from home in a place where he doesn't feel all too loved. So that's probably the reasoning behind it. And can you blame him if he doesn't want to come back? He left this football club on the last day of the summer transfer window because a previous manager didn't want him, and he's found a place now where the manager really trusts him. He's a big part of Nottingham Forest's plans for this season and plays in a really important role in their side. So why would he want to leave? That's the question.
Yeah, I think obviously, you make a lot of points that probably are the complicated reasons. I mean, I think that's quite evident from the reports that are coming out, and I think from a Middlesbrough fan perspective, everyone was very quick to say, well, if he doesn't want to be here, then get rid of him. But I also do sort of sympathise with him a little bit, as you say, under the previous manager, he had a lot of fans on his back, and whether that was right or wrong is a whole different debate. But he was deemed surplus to requirements, shipped out on loan, and at the time, no one really batted an eyelid. No one was really that bothered. But obviously, since he's come good at Nottingham Forest, now there was that sudden urge of people thinking, well, yeah, we'll get him back if he's shown what he can do again now. So let's bring him back. So I think from both sides, of course, there is reasoning behind each decision, and what I would say from Middlesbrough's side of things is, Jed Spence left under a complete different manager, and of course he'll be aware of that, but perhaps he hasn't actually realised the sheer amount of change that has gone on. We spoke about it last week. I'm sure Jed Spence won't be all that bothered about what's happening off the field, but just in terms of the club at the moment, it really does look like it's going in a different direction with the recruitment, and mainly for what Spence will be concerned by, and that's on the pitch. I don't think anyone really expected such sheer amount of change in the way we perform and the type of football that we try to play from obviously the transition from Neil Warnock to Chris Wilder. So yeah, there's certainly a case to be made that bringing Jed Spence back would, it would benefit us in more ways than one, because obviously Nottingham Forest currently find themselves above us in the table after a quite ridiculous run of form, really, that's seen them shoot up the table. And of course, this option now means that we can weaken a playoff rival. And, you only have to see how much it would affect Forest by some of the fans of Forest on social media. I think they are dreading, the possibility that Jed Spence might come back to Middlesbrough. So I think ultimately, if Chris Wilder wants to bring Jed Spence back, then Jed Spence will come back to the club. But if Jed Spence is making it very, very clear that he's adamant on staying at Nottingham Forest and doesn't want to come back, then, that changes everything, doesn't it? Just in terms of touching on the transfers question, I think similar to what you said again, Nathan, I think transfers, if we look at the transfers that will be made, I think the areas that we need a goalkeeper, of course, right wing back. If Spence doesn't come back, then we're still going to need cover for Jones. I think potentially, as you say, a left-footed centre back just to give us that little bit of balance. It'll be something that Chris Wilder looks at. And then really any additions in midfield, I would guess, would be as a response to departures from the club. And of course, you've mentioned Saliki, where that's a possibility that he may go. And really the area that we are crying out for, and what undoubtedly will be improved. We've seen it from all of the rumours so far that Chris Wilder wants to bring some new strikers into the club and add some real firepower. So yeah, I think hopefully, Charlie, that answers both of your questions. I think, yeah, as I say, the real areas that we do need, of course, just to reiterate, goalkeeper, wing back, and striker are the ones that are definitely, I think, three that will happen. So, moving on to another question, and I hope I haven't written this down wrong. I'm looking at the notes now, Nathan. The name is Balham. Now, I don't know if that is a Twitter name or a nickname or something like that. I apologise if I pronounced it wrong or if it's just a random generated name. I'm not sure. But the question that we received from Balham was, long term, do you see us getting in the playoffs? And he also asked, should we keep Neil Taylor past January? I think, firstly, I'll just answer the Neil Taylor question and get that out of the way on behalf of both of us. I think it's an obvious yes, isn't it? We saw him fill in against Bournemouth. Mark Bowler over the past season or so, really, we've seen that he hasn't really managed to often put sort of 10, 20 games together without picking up little knocks or things like that. So, of course, it's always essential that you have cover in that position. And I think Neil Taylor's contract runs until January. So that's definitely something that'll, I'm fairly sure, will be extended beyond January. Just going back to the question about the playoffs, I think this is also a question that we have answered previously, Nathan, and I think both of us sort of said really that, possibilities we sit 2 points off the playoffs currently, bearing in mind that some teams have had games cancelled. But yeah, I think we definitely can. 2 points it's one game, isn't it? And the way we're playing at the moment and the style of football, I think things will only improve between now and the end of the season. So to actually add to this question, now I never thought I'd be saying this, Nathan, and I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but the result on Saturday takes us exactly 10 points behind Bournemouth, who sit in second place. Do you think it is completely out of question? Because I think the question of getting into the playoffs, it's a possibility. Of course it is. Do you think that automatic promotion, not winning the league, but just challenging? We've seen what Blackburn have done. We've put Blackburn have put a hell of a run of results together. Do you think us challenging is completely out of the question, Nathan?
Do you know what?
It's a big question to ask, Nathan, but that's why we're here to discuss these types.
It is. It is it's a massive question to ask, and one that's caught me off guard a little bit as well.
The thing is, I'm normally pessimistic, so you probably didn't expect me to ask this, but I'm sort of asking it from a point of view where, yeah, I mean, my voice is going again, probably because I didn't even expect myself to actually ask that question. Yeah, I'm asking this from a point of view where, why not? You know, we're putting some results together at the moment. We've seen Blackburn do it. Let's ask the question, why not? It's Christmas. Everyone has that extra 5-10% about them. So yeah, I'm putting it to you, Nathan. Am I getting far too ahead of myself, or is there a small chance?
I think with everything, there's always a chance, but I think you are getting a bit ahead of yourself here. We've had a few.
I am.
We've had a few weeks under Chris Wilder now where results have been going our way, and those results are going our way, not through luck, but through our own performances. We are performing really well at the minute, creating chances, being defensively solid, and just putting in all-round good performances against sides that are meant to be some of the better sides in the division. You look at Bournemouth, Stoke, Swansea, and even Huddersfield when we went to go and play them. These sides were all above us when we've played them. All right, were Swansea above us? Maybe they're around the same point as us when it happened.
Before we played Swansea, they were above us. Yeah.
Well, so there you go then. So we played all these sides that are above us in the table, and I think it's fair to say every side that we've played in the last four that have all been above us, we've been by far the better side in each game that we've played in, really, in terms of chances created and just all-round team performance. I feel like that we've been the better sides. I think looking at the table now, we are sat in 9th position with immediately above us Coventry, and then it's Forest, Stoke, QPR, West Brom, Blackburn, Bournemouth, Fulham. Looking at that, only 2 sides above us have taken points off us, and that was QPR in a game where mistakes cost us, I feel, and Coventry, where, again, I think we'd both rather not talk about Coventry both being there, but I think we said even months ago, Coventry, we felt like they probably would fall away eventually. Now, I don't want to jinx Coventry all too much, but I do feel as though that they will fall away and they won't have quite enough. But you look at Forest, we'll get onto them because we've got them up next, of course, Boxing Day at the Riverside. But in their case, they were like bottom of the league when Steve Cooper came and took over. Now, since Steve Cooper took over at Forest, they've lost 1 game in 15, and that was against Fulham, who are, of course, league leaders in the division. They've won 8 and drawn 6, and now they're on the verge of the playoffs, 1 point away from the playoffs, which just proves that any team in the division can throw a run together, and who knows where it takes them. Now, going back to your question, whether I think automatic promotion's out of the question, realistically, yeah, I do think it is out of the question. I think these sides that are above us will pick up form. Bournemouth are a bit iffy at the minute with their run of form, lost a few games in a row, but I have no doubt that they'll pick up. They've got one of the strongest squads in the division, and it shouldn't continue for much longer, this run of form that they're on. Blackburn, they're on a good run of form at the minute. Do I think they'll continue it? Who knows? Come January, they may have players that are stripped away from that squad sooner rather than later, really, with the way that they're performing. I think everyone looks at Brereton Diaz as the main man, and he's been linked with moves to the Premier League at sides that are lower down the division, and he probably will leave in January, knowing the type of club that Blackburn are. But long term, can we get playoffs? That's a balanced question. I'd agree. Yes, we can. We can get playoffs, really. If I look at the sides above us, I don't really see anyone above us that I'm necessarily worried by, if I'm honest. I think the way we're playing, and from what I've seen, we're now pretty much halfway through the season. And we've seen these sides play against Middlesbrough at least once. And from what I've seen from these sides, there's no real standout. I think the division this season is so closely matched in terms of all sides' ability. Even Fulham, really. Fulham can drop points. We have seen that. And we went to Fulham and got a point ourselves. So I think the division's anyone's, really. Anyone's. And if they can throw, if any team can throw a good run of results together, it can take them so far in this division this season. It's so tight. So long term, can we get playoffs? Why not?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave the questions on. Before I start saying that we are going to get automatically promoted, to be honest. No, in reality, of course, I asked it more of a sort of a question really to shock you into action, Nathan, just sort of try and catch you off guard and see how you felt. But yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly there. There is a lot of good teams in this division. Admittedly, they can be beaten, as you say. I don't think before Chris Wilder come in, whole different story. But
100%.
With Chris Wilder now, I don't really fear anyone in the division. So, with that being said, we'll move on to one team that is above us in the table, and one team that when you look at the previous fixture and when we beat Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, they were in the bottom three, and they look dead and buried under Chris Hughton. Chris Hughton was sacked following that game, and since then it has been a simply remarkable run of form under Steve Cooper. They haven't been beaten for 9 games now. And yeah, I think with that being said, it's going to be another tough test at the Riverside, isn't it?
It is. It's a very big test. Nottingham Forest, apart from Blackburn, I'd say that they're probably the form side in the division, really, at this current time. I've just reeled off the stats there. Only been beat once in the last 15 games under Steve Cooper. And he's done a remarkable job to turn them from where they were in the table, which were, as you said, dead and buried. They didn't look great when they played us earlier on in the season. And he's done a fantastic job to turn it round and get them playing in a way where they're comfortable with the players that they have. They're not as rigid as they were. I think they play quite similarly to Chris Wilder, really looking to just create lots of chances, but being defensively solid as well. And it's working for them at this current time. They've found themselves 7th in the table, 1 point off the playoffs, 1 point above us in the table as well. And it's certainly going to be a very good game at the Riverside. All fingers crossed that nothing happens in the next week that stops this from happening, because I think everyone's got their eyes on this one. It's a very, very exciting prospect, this game.
Yeah, it is. And before really we delve into some of the players that are going to probably cause us problems, I should say that for those actually watching on YouTube, I have just turned the brightness down on my iPad because I was starting to worry that I actually looked a little bit like Dracula with the darkness descending into the room and the light flickering up on my face. I almost felt like I was ready to tell a horror story, to be honest. Hopefully the Nottingham Forest game isn't a horror story, if you pardon the pun. So moving on to the players, which, Forest have. One player, of course, that's going to be missing, Jed Spence, of course, with his loan agreement means he won't be playing. But yeah, I think what I'm going to do here is, Nathan, I'm going to talk about one of the players and ask you to talk about another one of the players because, of course, um, there is quite the connection there, isn't there, with Lincoln? And I'm sure your Lincoln supporting mates will be very interested to hear your point of view on Brennan Johnson, of course, who we'll talk about. Firstly, obviously, Lewis Grabban. I think all Championship fans know everything what Lewis Grabban's about. He's already scored 10 this season and assisted 4. And, even when Nottingham Forest have been at the worst, Lewis Grabban's always amongst the goals. He scored goals for Bournemouth. He scored goals for Norwich when he was there. He even scored goals for Sunderland when he was on loan there in the Championship. And I mean, I don't think they won a game practically all season. So, yeah, he's a goal scorer, isn't he? So, of course, he'll be looking to get on the end of crosses. I'm sure he won't be getting on the end of Jed Spence's crosses because he won't be playing. But, Nottingham Forest have got enough players in that team where I'm sure he'll have chances during the game. And it's just about trying to stop that, really, because Lewis Grabban, I don't think it would be an over-exaggeration to say that he's probably one of the most sort of deadly strikers in the division over the past few years in the Championship. So, yeah, we all know what to expect from him. Moving on to you now, Nathan, and moving on to Brennan Johnson, of course, I mentioned him. He spent last season on loan at Lincoln, and of course, for those that don't know, and I'm sure listeners that have listened to the podcast previously will know that you go to university in Lincoln, so you know a lot about Brennan Johnson. What sort of threat is he going to give us on Boxing Day?
Yeah, he's certainly Nottingham Forest's live wire. Really, he's arguably their best player. Certainly going forward, he's very important in the way they play. He's very direct, very quick, and he's chipped in with a few goals and assists this season as well. Last season, he was sent on loan to Lincoln City in League One, and a lot of Forest fans kind of thought, well, maybe he could have impacted the first team if he'd had a chance last season. But yeah, last season in League One, he was probably one of the better players in the division. He fired Lincoln City to the playoff final, which was an unbelievable achievement. If you look where they are now in the table, they're dwindling quite low in League One, and a lot of that is down to the loss of Johnson and his goals and his contribution for them last season. So going back to this season, he's made the step up to the Championship remarkably well, being looked at now by Premier League clubs that may even look to pick him up in January. He was linked with Brentford and Leeds in the summer prior to this season, and he's been given the chance to make the step up to the Championship, and he's done that. He scored on Saturday, the winner against Hull City, and he did really well to score the goal as well. Took the ball well on his chest and just slotted it in the corner really well. Homegrown talent for Nottingham Forest, and I have no doubt that either Neil Taylor or Mark Bowler will have the work cut out trying to mark him on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. Sunday, of course. We won't be playing on Christmas Day, I suppose. Yeah. So, I mean, just in terms of Brennan Johnson, he has 5 goals and 5 assists so far this season. As you say, he's settled into the Championship very well, and he looks completely at home, doesn't he? He's got all the attributes to cause us problems, and I'm sure that he'll give I think he's quite capable of playing from the left and from the right. So I think, whoever, as you say, whoever's up against him will have to be on their A game and defend well. Just in terms of obviously the way that Nottingham Forest play, typically they do play similarly to Chris Wilder's formation and similarly to pretty much everyone in the Championship these days. They do play with a 5 at the back formation, although with Jed Spence out of the game, of course, you maybe would wonder if that would potentially change the way they play, or if they might revert to a 4 potentially, or they might just change personnel. It remains to be seen. But typically they do play that 5, so it'll of course be that matchup with either side's wing backs, and Nottingham Forest. Okay, last season it wasn't the greatest of seasons, and at the start of this season, you know, um, they weren't playing great either. But typically all of our games against Forest are pretty closely contested, and yeah, with it being on Boxing Day, I'm sure it'll be a strong crowd at the Riverside. And it's an occasion that I'm looking forward to be honest. I think it'll be another really good game for Middlesbrough fans. Fingers crossed, but definitely for neutrals as well.
Yeah, Boxing Day football's best football of the year, really. And playing Nottingham Forest as well, one of the bigger clubs in the division. They'll definitely bring a good following. They always do to the Riverside. And yeah, it'll be a fantastic atmosphere. Two sides that are really, really good footballing sides now. In fact, it feels amazing saying Borough are a really good footballing side because we haven't had that for years. But yeah, two good sides that want to keep the ball, want to create chances against each other. Players that stand out. You look at Jones, Sparrow, Tavernier, Crooks. You look at their lot, which Johnson, Graben, Zinkernagel, all these types of players that are looking to get on the ball and create chances. And it has all the ingredients to be a fantastic game. And let's just hope that it can live up to that and be a good game. But let's hope that Borough are on the right result again.
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what? I don't even think you were prepared for this, to be honest. But because it is our last podcast before Christmas, I just wanted to ask you some ridiculous questions about your Christmas and about Borough's Christmas. And as soon as you said ingredients, my mind straight away thought about Christmas dinner. Obviously, it's a little bit different, isn't it? In regards to the way that footballers have their Christmas. So one question I was thinking, and I was, I haven't written them down on purpose because I knew you would look at them. I wanted to spring it on you, sort of, and let you sort of think about it on the spot. So my question is, Nathan, if of course you'll have a lovely Christmas with your family, of course you will. But if someone said, you can have your Christmas with your family, and you can also have another dinner later in the day. Now, I'm not sure if you could even stomach another dinner, but let's just say a Christmas party, and you got to pick 3 Middlesbrough players from the current crop of players to be at said party or said dinner. Who are you picking?
It's a very good question. But number one, Onel Hernandez. What a
Yeah.
man. He's just a proper character. He'd be unbelievable crack. He'd be flying around the kitchen table after he's had a few bucks fizzes, and it'd just be carnage. So Onel Hernandez is number one. I think Sparrow for his cool, calm persona. I think he'd just be like having a conversation with Zlatan, if I'm honest. Just so funny, but in his own little way, just be hilarious. And lastly, I would probably pick either Dale Fry or Uche. Dale Fry, just because I think he'd be so just daft. It's fun, just daft type of funny. And Uche, just because I think I don't even know, it'd just be too funny. Uche and Hernandez, the big man, little man duo that seems to come on for the last 20 minutes every week. They must have a good partnership. Yeah, it'd just be funny, and a funny selection of players as well. What are you going for yourself? Surely you've got 3 yourself.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, I hadn't actually thought about it, but I quite like your reasoning. And also, typically Christmas time, everyone has a few too many, don't they? And I mean, I don't want to sort of make any conceptions about everyone everyone else's Christmases, I should say. But around Christmas, if anyone has a few too many and any sort of fights break out, at least if Uche is there, like you say, I think he's dealing with that. He can sort of act as a bouncer. If any other people rock up that you don't want there, he's just sort of palming them away straight away, just holding them off at the front door like that. Oh, I'm out. In terms of my own, I think I'm going to have to say Arnell again. Purely because of that celebration. I was trying not to hysterically just laugh and completely lose where we were in the podcast with that. So Arnell Hernandez, 100%, as you say, he'll have a few of whatever he likes to drink and then probably be swinging his shirt around. I'm actually going to go with a little bit of a different one here. I'm actually going to say Johnny Howson because now I've never met Johnny Howson, and nor have I seen the way he lives or his cooking arrangements. But for some reason, I just have a feeling that if you asked him, he because I'm not much of a cook myself. I feel like if you asked Johnny Howson, he'd be able to rustle up a decent dinner. I feel like he's just one of them blokes that just can't deal with that. So yeah, Johnny Howson definitely. Arnell, of course, as well. And then, do you know what? I quite like your reasoning behind Sparrow, but I don't want to be the same. So do you know what? I'm going to go with Joe Lumley.
Joe Lumley.
And do you know why? It's because, I pointed out to you, didn't I? And everyone notices at the games. He absolutely thrives off that ain't nobody chant. And I feel like if the day or the party, whatever you want to call it, wasn't going as much to plan as perhaps, you first wanted it to, Joe Lumley's just got that in him to just sort of get everything started a little bit. Bang on something on his phone. I don't know what his playlist's looking like, but I just feel like he's got a bit of energy just to sort of G's up the crowd, doesn't he? So surely he could get a Christmas party going.
Yeah, 100%. I think those two answers there from both of us are decent answers. Good reasoning as well.
Yeah, I think in fairness, considering I asked that and put you on the spot a little bit, I think you've done well to think about that. Yeah, I think that's a nice place to end it on, of course. Christmas themed, last podcast before Christmas. We had to incorporate it in there somehow. I don't think we were ever going to wear Christmas Santa hats on the podcast, but you never know. In the future, it might be something that we look into. But yeah, from me and Nathan, of course, thank you as ever for watching and listening to the podcast. And your support since the start of the season. I don't know whether the way it's going to fall, whether we actually have a podcast prior to New Year. I think we agreed, didn't we, that actually the first podcast is going to be after New Year's Day, and we will have one hell of a tasty podcast because we'll have 3 games, of course. As much as we are dedicated, we thought that we'd leave the podcast for Christmas Day or anything like that. So yeah, I'll just say firstly, and Nathan, I'll let you say, of course, that considering we started at the start of this season and up until this point, this support's been amazing. All the listens, of course, we appreciate. As I say, normally any questions that have got in touch and just in general with the account, all of the follows and interaction, we really appreciate it. So thank you going into the new year for that. Nathan, I'll let you have a little parting message. Maybe people will listen to this instead of the Queen on Christmas Day.
Got to get the listen in before the big game on Boxing Day. But yeah, just to reiterate what Chris said there, thanks everyone for listening throughout the season so far. It's been probably painful, a bit under Neil Warnock, to listen to me and Chris pretty much crying how bad we were and how bad the results were and how bad referees are in this division. But it's been lively the last few weeks. the results have certainly helped us both be a bit more upbeat about the podcast. So with that, Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope everyone has a good Christmas and a good New Year as well. And hopefully during this time that the Borough are all okay and keep firing the results in.
Yeah, definitely. That's a lovely place to leave it on, Nathan. So yeah, just to reiterate, if I can get my words out, I haven't even had a drink yet. So yeah, I'll save that for Christmas Day. But yes, as Nathan says, from both of us, have a very nice Christmas. Of course, best wishes for everyone listening and watching going into the new year. And thank you again for watching and listening to the Boropolis Podcast.